Where in my life have I assumed understanding instead of confirming it? How can I begin to think about times where I didn't know that it mattered that much because I didn't go back and get clarity. I didn't allow myself to get understanding. So, the beautiful part about executive peace, which is one thing that I am creating and you are creating, we are creating in various spaces that we dwell, is that there has to be clarity. So, clarity within first, clarity without secondly. So, making sure that you fully understand and ask those pointed questions, which are vital and they're okay to ask because it gets us to the destination, which is that one solution. I have another question to ask here, and I just jotted down some things I didn't necessarily note it here, but I wanted to say to you, what expectation have you repeated emotionally, but not clearly? So sometimes we have an emotional response to a situation and we don't have clarity inwardly of that or mutually with the person that we're talking to. And so we have to ask ourselves that where are we putting in emotions in a scenario as well? So that situation where we say you didn't listen versus you never told me, where are emotions mixed up in there? Hello, welcome to another episode of Two Sides, One Solution. I am L. Starks, your facilitator and host of this podcast, and you are my guest every single episode. We're so grateful for individuals who are already sending in their scenarios that they would like to be presented anonymously here on this podcast so that we can discuss what are the two sides of this situation and how do we come to one solution in the midst of it. So I'm so excited about today. And if you want to know how you can submit your scenario, just go ahead and email that after you watch this episode here and you get a gist of how we flow here on the podcast. You can send your scenario to 2s1s at alaskinsolution.com, and we'll be happy to anonymously present your scenario here. In the subject line, you can just put podcast and then write to us and allow us to see what we can bring forth when we come together here weekly. This episode here is playing off of the last, what I considered a little short mini series, because it was four parts to what I called little fires, because those little fires can really just evolve into wildfire and really destroy so many aspects of our families, our cultures, our organizations, our communities, and the world essentially. So the goal here is to help you see that we are the solution. You are the solution. I am a solution. You are a solution. And we're going to allow ourselves to see things in a light, in a manner that sometimes in the midst of heated conflict, we just do not see. So today we're going to look at you don't listen versus you never told me. How many of us have been in that situation? A lot of times we are in the midst of that situation. So you may find it, you may be one party in this particular scenario of this versus that. And what side do you stand on? In most scenarios, it may be you're the individual that someone is telling you, you do not listen. It may be that you're on the other side of the coin and you're the individual that is always thinking, but they never told me. Like, I don't know what they're talking about, right? So there are times that we are in scenarios where we have two sides here. We have two parties involved, two sides. And one side of that coin is saying, I've said this 100 times. 100 times I've said this over and over to you, and it is not coming forth for you to comprehend or understand, right? And then they'll just shout, but you don't listen. Then the other side may be speaking and saying, you never told me that it mattered this much. Okay. So listening versus someone on the other side saying, I heard you, but I did not know that it mattered this much. So see how that can be a very tug of war, tugging at each other scenario between two parties for sure. And we all have found our way and space in that scenario at some part of time in encounters with individuals. So we have to think about that and see what it is that we can do to come to a resolution of a situation like that. And you may be in a situation like that right now. You are wondering why people do not listen, or on the side of a relationship or even a co-working colleague leadership role position with someone that you're leading, and they're like, but you never told me. How do we resolve this? So let's just ask a few questions here. How do we get to where we need to be? One of those questions that you're going to ask in that particular scenario is, where in my life have I assumed understanding instead of confirming it? How can I begin to think about times where I didn't know that it mattered that much because I didn't go back and get clarity? I didn't allow myself to get understanding. So, the beautiful part about executive peace, which is one thing that I am creating and you are creating, we are creating in various spaces that we dwell, is that there has to be clarity. So, clarity within first, clarity without secondly. So, making sure that you fully understand and ask those pointed questions, which are vital and they're okay to ask because it gets us to the destination, which is that one solution. I have another question to ask here, and I just jotted down some things I didn't necessarily note it here, but I wanted to say to you, what expectation have you repeated emotionally, but not clearly? So sometimes we have an emotional response to a situation and we don't have clarity inwardly of that or mutually with the person that we're talking to. And so we have to ask ourselves that, where are we putting in emotions in a scenario as well? So that situation where we say, you didn't listen versus you never told me, where are emotions mixed up in there? So this is a good time. You, like I said, you're my guest. So I'm actually questioning you. I am allowing you to give feedback. I am allowing you to think through the processes of the things that we're discussing together when we come on two sides and one solution, so that we are allowing ourselves to be the solution, that we are not lending ourselves always to a third party to come in, but I'm giving strategic tools and strategies, thought provoking questions to really challenge you to see how, when the next scenario comes that brings up that versus this or that, you can win. So important for you to gain that for yourself. And what would change if you checked for understanding instead of agreement? Wow, that is a good one. What would be different? Instead of agreement here, I want to make sure that I'm gaining understanding, because we can agree to disagree, but I want to make sure that we have understanding. So moving forward, I will know that this particular thing is that important to this person. So then they won't feel that I did not hear them, because I'll take action. You'll take action. The repeating of something is potentially necessary to this particular person because of the strain on their life, the complexity of what they're juggling in multitasking, and therefore they may not remember things as much. So, intentional uh, repetition of something may be important. And we can probably say that for those who are parents who are watching this at the moment. You can think about times that just for your child, you have to say it over and over and over and over again. Now, when you, as a leader of leaders that you are, when you're leading someone, it's not so much that they're your child, but they're human, and that in some scenarios, based upon that person's current life, based upon the weight within their life right now, it may lend for continual repetition from time to time. And you don't necessarily, as a leader, as a CEO, as a boss, as a supervisor, as a manager, you may find yourself in a space that you do not want to keep repeating yourself. So that's where the exploration comes in, not necessarily being in agreement that this person has that as a frailty for them, but that you as the leader can come and say, how can I best support you so that we're gaining understanding? Because I cannot continue to come and repeat it, but I can maybe intentionally do some things that will help you if you feel that is a struggle for you. And the beautiful thing about technology, especially as a leader, we can schedule out reminders. We can schedule out those emails that go to the people that we're leading. So if you have someone that you know needs that extra nudge for whatever reason, and hopefully they feel safe and comfortable enough to trust you to maybe share the load that they're dealing with that hinders them from being as swift to instruction and guidance, hopefully they can share that. Sometimes people may not feel comfortable to share that information. So one just helpful tip that I can give you here is that you would allow yourself to be open to creative ways to give repetition. And that could be scheduling, reminder, emails, and messages, even maybe even potentially via text if you have that capacity and network to do that for a reminder. And after you've done your due diligence, and the hope is that we're getting to a stage where we're finding a solution, your needs are being met because you have a desire for something to be done without you continually repeating it. And the other party is being fulfilled because they're struggling to remember those things or keep it at the forefront based upon their long priority list. They're being fulfilled because you're just giving a gentle nudge and saying, hey, I'm compromising, or at least we're not in agreement, but we're coming together with one solution that can help both sides. So once again, when we think about this, so when it comes back to you again, and this is posed as a question or as a statement, I should say, and sometimes a very forceful statement, depending on the emotions behind it. Okay. You don't hear me versus you never told me. When that comes up, you may begin to look at what this one solution provides. And this is going to be our take home for today in this episode. The one solution in this scenario here is expectations must be clearly framed. And everybody's frame of lens is different, right? Could you imagine trying to put a 8 by 10 photo into a 5 by 7 frame? Not going to be possible unless you're going to cut out parts of the picture that gives the full context of the individuals that are being photoed. So you might be cutting out a person, you're cutting out a limb, you're cutting out a head, and you don't want that. So we have to make sure that it's framed. It is framed. It is framed well for whoever we are leading and guiding or giving instruction to. Then we recognize that it has to be repeated. And I talked a little bit about this with intentionality. So I'm going to probably be open to curiosity with this individual or this group or whatever setting that you're in. You're going to make sure that you are striving to be open to what will be useful, what will be helpful to help in this scenario with these individuals, okay, or whatever you're leading in. The other part behind this is make sure it's confirmed. I remember when I was in the 7th grade, I'll never forget this because my teacher, Miss Singh, was my 7th grade English teacher. And she wrote assume on the board, ASSUME. And she looked to the students in the class and she says, there are 3 words here. And you all tell me what those 3 words are. And we're looking like, it's assume, like one word. What are you talking about, Miss Singh? Um, and so lo and behold, these young 7th graders, so guess what? What's that, about 12 years old, something like that? Was not following her, was not on track with her. We didn't understand. And she could very well say to us, you don't listen. You don't listen because this is something I'm trying to tell you or I've mentioned before. And we're sitting there like, but you never told us. Like, what are you talking about? So that was kind of like the awkwardness that was in the room. But her pointing this out in regards to not assuming stuck with me had up to this day from 12 years old to now. And she went and she underlined ASS, and then she underlined you, and then she underlined me. And she gave us clarity in what she was trying to emphasize using that one word. She said, whenever you assume, you are making an ass out of you and me. So, no assuming in this class. And that has always stuck with me. If I didn't learn anything else from seventh grade English class, it was that. Literally, like, I don't even know what else we went over that year. That stuck with me and was such a great life lesson. And it serves me well even in my role in my profession as a mediator. And that is not to assume. And so I want to leave that with you today, that you're not assuming. Make sure that your expectations are clearly framed, that it's repeated with intention. And that includes sometimes some curiosity to be creative and lend ways to each other and give each other grace to make it informative. And then confirm it firmly so that you're not assuming and making an ass out of you and me. And that's the two parties. But in order for us to get to the one side, that one solution, we must make sure our expectations are clear. Therefore, we can stand boldly together on that one solution so that we do not have to be in the boxing ring of two sides of you don't listen versus you never told me, because our expectations have been made clear, framed clear. So, what are those three things so you can remember? Framed clearly. Let's put this up again. Framed clearly, not putting an 8x7 in a five, putting an 8x10 in a 5x7 frame. Know which frame we're dealing with so that we can apply appropriately. Repeat with intention and confirm and not assume. And remember what Miss Singh taught us, we're not going to assume. Thank you so much for joining me for another podcast of Two Sides, One Solution, where we are taking a drone perspective of two situations and making sure that we are navigating one solution to move forward, creating harmonious supercells in every space that we dwell. And you may have a scenario. Next episode, I'm going to pull up one of the scenarios that was sent to me so that we can touch base and dialogue on that. But if you have a scenario you would like to submit, and we address here in our time together. Why? Because you're my special guest every single week. Just send it to 2s1s at alastingsolution.com. See you next time. Thank you for joining me. You are a solution.